Days of Giving Your Best. It's a joyful journey into the holidays presented by the wise women of Brigid Place. They're teaching wisdom, compassion, hospitality, and healing. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi there, this is Teresa Marone, your host today on a special edition of Gems of Wisdom Radio. I'm so excited to welcome you here, and it is day 3 of our 21 Days of Giving Your Best. Our show today is going to be something very, very special about traditions and holidays and how we can approach them with kind of a new and maybe I should say a renewed enthusiasm, with less stress and more ability to process things in real time and be very, very present. My two guests today are experts in their field and able to give us some real insight into it. And I'd like to share with you our guest, Reverend Brigid Waszcznak, and author Monette Chilson are both going to be sharing with you today and with each other. And I'd like to welcome my first guest, Reverend Brigid Waszcznak, first. Hello, Brigid. How are you, honey?
I'm fine, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, all the way from Tucson, right?
Yes, all the way from Tucson.
Well, let's just share a little bit with the listeners what you're all about. You have been involved in women's studies and being a seeker and a facilitator for many years, and right now you're the women's ministry mentor at the St. Matthew's Episcopal Church in Tucson, Arizona. And you've been a Brigid's Place supporter for a long time, haven't you?
I have. I've been supporting Brigid's Place, watching it from afar for a very long time, and just absolutely loving everything that is there and what Brigid's Place does and stands for.
Well, I know that when I first met you in August of this year, we had planned to sit down and talk for about 10 or 15 minutes. Just, you were on your way from somewhere and you were going to somewhere, and we ended up talking for about 2 hours about all the excitement that do you remember how great that was?
It was really good. We it was a good connection, and it was exciting to listen and share in your plans and where Brigid's Place was going and what the plans were for the future, and this particular 21-day offering. It was exciting.
Well, back in August, it was just kind of like a barely formed idea, but we knew that it would develop in its own way and become something that we could all be proud of. Now, one of the things that I want to make sure we get involved in talking about is the Women's Wisdom Circle. That's something you've been doing in Tucson and something that you and I want to collaborate on in the future.
Correct.
Do you mind if I share with the listeners what your vision is of that?
No, go ahead.
Well, I'll just have to tell everybody that Brigid wrote this, but it's nicer to be kind of edified by someone else talking about you, don't you think?
I'd prefer someone else do it than for me to do it.
Exactly. So the Women's Wisdom Circle is an important piece of Brigid's ministry to women. She wants everyone to know it's not a support group. It's a sanctuary that invites women to be who they are without needing to change or fix themselves or, anyone else for that matter. So it's a real place to relax. And, women of all ages and all denominations, or even no denomination, can gather for deep listening, creative reflection, and authentic soul sharing without, having to get to the root of the problem or feel, on or underneath a spotlight. And Brigid always likes to begin by exploring a wisdom quote and then just to go where it leads. So, Brigid, you've given us permission to kind of use that format in our show a little bit later with you and Monette and me, right?
Yes. Yes. And to that end, sent a few quotes that we could choose from, and you selected a great one.
Well, out of the ones that you chose for me to select from, makes it really lovely. But what do you feel is your role as facilitator of these circles?
So I do less facilitating than I do coming alongside, and I just serve where these wild, sacred, fun, feminine people share fellowship and wit and wisdom, because there's deep wisdom within each of us. And it's so surprising, even to ourselves, as we open our mouths and something comes out we didn't even know we were going to say. And someone else will go, oh, that was really good. And then you know, yes, that was a piece of wisdom.
That's where the circle is very powerful, because the thought processes go around the circle and come back even stronger. Isn't that what you were sharing with me at one point?
Yes, and we sit in circle so that we're all equal. There's nobody who is above anybody else, and we make sure that at the beginning of every circle we share our first names and a little. I usually ask a silly question like, "What's your favorite color?" or something silly that you can share that's about you, and that way no one feels that she has entered a circle where there are already alliances, there are already groups formed. We're all one big circle.
Oh, that's so important. You wrote something to me I want to share with the listeners before I introduce Monette here in just a moment, and that is the circle is a place to honor our flowering alongside our brokenness. So if we are constantly in a state of growth and renewal and constantly in a state of repairing our brokenness, we can always stay aware of our humanness, and I think maybe be more in a place of, ready to listen and to grow. I mean, is that kind of where you're coming from there?
Yes, because I think it allows us to be in an open-hearted state, and I think it allows us to listen to our souls speaking. We're sometimes not even aware of our brokenness, and sometimes we're not even aware that we are blossoming and blooming. So it's a wonderful place to just sit and be open to what comes up in you and what comes up in the circle.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to introduce our second guest, and Monette, you and I have just become fast friends, and do you realize that we've known each other just about a year now?
I didn't realize that. It seems like forever, doesn't it?
In
a good way.
In a very good way. We met at the St. Brigid's Feast last year, 2015. So we're coming upon our first anniversary. We'll have to celebrate that along with St. Brigid.
I agree.
So do you mind telling our listeners just a little bit about Sophia Rising, your book, and also what is the most important thing to you?
The most important thing to me in what way, Teresa?
Well, there's something on your website. I should have prefaced by saying that.
Oh, okay.
I
think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the three things that you bring to every situation.
Okay. Well, my passion comes from this melding that happened kind of organically in my life of my yoga practice, my spiritual experience, and trying to meld that within my faith and use that. So what I've done in my book is I bring in a lot of the things that are important to me in a deep heart way, and that's that feminine side of God I bring in. I bring in yoga as an expression and embodiment. I think we miss a lot of embodiment a lot of times in our practices. And I just kind of demystify this whole yoga to people. They think either, oh, it's just physical, or, oh, it's this weird spirituality that I don't understand and these 8 limbs. And I just kind of lay it out there and show how these practices, some of them that we'll probably talk about later, that can help you through stressful situations, the meditation and the breathing, how these are really not mysterious, but they're tools that we can use. And I think on my website what you were talking about is I just try to bring a way to see the sacred into everything I do, whether it's writing, I'm not a photographer by trade, and I don't even claim to be, a great photographer, but I think that for me, capturing images of everyday things, natural things most of the time, is a way for me to observe the sacred as I go about my day, whether it's, a perfect little raindrop on a petal as I walk by, and just noticing and grounding in the beauty that's around us wherever we are.
Well, I think that the way that you just described how you approach everyday living is exactly what the point of the 21 days of giving your best is all about. It's about seeing the best and experiential living, so that we don't just power through the moments thinking of what's to come, or get through the moments worrying about what just happened. We're truly right here and present. Will you share with the listeners your website, please?
Sure. It is Sophia, which is with a PH, SophiaRisingYoga.com.
And you can get a hold of Monette's book there, and also see some of these photos that she's talking about. And, of course, she says she's not a professional photographer, but her images are compelling. And one of the very first things before I even met Monette, I had been to her website and seen these images, and they all have a feeling of the divine. Remember that we talked about that, Monette?
I do. And I love that you pointed that out, because to me that's just a capturing, and I don't sometimes sit back and say, oh, what is it that I'm capturing? And it's nice to have someone else look at it and say, you captured that divine spark when you walked by, and that was nice.
Well, our next Gems of Wisdom next week is going to be Karen Walrond, and she is, she's a top photographer. I mean, she is very famous, and she doesn't lead off with that. If you just met her, that wouldn't it wouldn't be apparent. What would be apparent is that she's a glowing example of a powerful and beautiful woman. But her tagline is "Look for the light," and I think that she would love your photos, Monette. I really do.
Yes.
I think that
yeah.
You've seen her things.
I've seen her on Instagram, and I've done some of her hashtag "Look for the light." Sometimes I will remember, if I think about it, and tag a photo "Look for the light." Yeah, she's going to be a really interesting person to speak to on Gems of Wisdom next week. So, Monette, when you very first heard about the 21 days of giving your best, tell the listeners and share with me as well why you thought it was such a great idea. I think that if there's one time of the year that any of us need daily reminders to be present and to find the sacred, is this time of year, which is a little ironic because it is this sacred, holy time. But it is hard with the pressure that we put on ourselves and absorb from the world. It's hard to be mindful and see the sacred. At church last week, I thought it was just very ironic. I go to this contemplative service, and we do a heart listening set. It reminded me when you were talking about the wisdom circles, where we sit around and process these really beautiful things. And the leader said, and next week will be our last week before the holidays, because, it's really crazy around the church in the holidays. And I thought,
oh,
I know. I thought we need the heart listening more than ever during this time. So that, to me, I think you are providing this phenomenal service that we can click on our email. You've curated the resources. We can get our dose of sanity, and then not only, like you said, run the race through the grocery store getting ready for Thanksgiving, but embody that spirit and that grateful attitude as we go into Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of that. So I think it's wonderful.
Well, what I was saying to Eileen Figueroa, who has been my co-host on our Mondays to kind of get the week started, is that so many of the people who are contributors, like yourself and like Brigid, have something that we're working through ourselves, and that's why, we wanted to step up and contribute. And I know for me, it has been such a blessing to see what's on everybody else's mind. I get all this stuff coming in, and I get to make it nice or edit it or, put it in a different format. And so I get to really, really absorb what everybody's trying to say. And I kind of, get on the phone and say, well, what did you mean by this? Does this picture work for you? Kind of a thing. And I really am seeing that I'm not alone. Everybody is going through the same types of things, the same struggles, the same, family and workplace stress and health issues. We're all going through the same things. So if we can connect at all in an uplifting and connection and collective consciousness way, I think it's healing not only for us, but it spreads out to the people that we connect with away from this little sanctuary. I mean, that's how I kind of feel about it.
I agree. Yeah.
So, ladies, I am about to start the Wisdom Circle portion of the program. And I'm so excited about this, really. Can you tell? I'm kind of getting goofy. But so I'm going to read the quote that Brigid made available to me, and then we're going to kind of go around the circle. Brigid, I'll start with you after the quote. So, okay. Every waking moment, we talk to ourselves about the things we experience. Our self-talk, the thoughts we communicate to ourselves, in turn, controls the way we feel and act. And we're going to credit that to John Limbo. Now, Brigid, do you feel that we can do a little bit better of a job on this self-talk that we have running through our heads all day?
I do believe that, and I think that we don't let ourselves know often enough that what we tell ourselves it comes true in our body. So if you tell yourself you're stressed, then you're going to be stressed. If you tell yourself you're going to be calm and you're going to be very pleased and happy with what you're doing and where you are at the moment, then you will be. And I don't think we understand how powerful what we say to ourselves is and how we internalize it in such a way that it seeps into our muscles and our bloodstream and our cells. And we kind of sabotage ourselves. And women especially do it most during holiday times because we're the ones who are most responsible for all of what happens.
We do end up being the ones that stay in the kitchen quite a bit. So, Monette, do you want to pick that thread up and carry it into the body a little bit?
Sure. I think probably, there were many things that drew me to yoga, but I think the ability to work things out physically, things that we can't not even be able to name, appealed to me. And sometimes, like a lot of things, even though I don't feel like, and I can think of 10 other things on my list that I should, that bad word that we do to ourselves, should be doing, if I get on the mat and just listen and see what's there and work things out, I'm never sorry for spending that time. I never say, oh, gosh, I should have knocked those 3 things off my to-do list. So I think Brigid hit the nail on the head that this physical is so connected to the emotional and the rest of there's no separating those. And I think that there are so many external expectations that we have of ourselves during this season that we self-sabotage in that way, that we think if we don't look like the Hallmark greeting card and these images that we've grown up, if we don't create a holiday, not just for us, but goodness, we're trying to orchestrate our whole family to look like, getting the Christmas card photo, that's a perfect example. You got to get it. You got to all look good. You got to send it out to the world so you have validated yourself and your worth.
I just
So for
have
me,
to interject there. We're not all the Kardashians. I mean, we don't all look good in Roberto Galliano.
I know.
Well,
So for me, there are things. That's one of the things. Like what I would encourage people to do is look at the things that you think you always have to do, like Christmas cards, and ask honestly, what would happen if I didn't? Well, the world is not going to fall apart. And I'm not speaking like theoretically because I've done this. And I do enjoy doing Christmas cards most years. And last year, I think, I didn't do one. And the world didn't fall apart. I was really kind of a rebel with that. This was a big awakening for me last year. I didn't do the Christmas card. And for a variety of funny reasons, I ended up not putting up a Christmas tree either. And you know what? Kind of like the Grinch that Stole Christmas, and at the end they say, and Christmas happened anyway, without the trappings, it happened anyway.
It happened
no tree,
anyway.
No Christmas cards. It still happened. So I think we can let go of more than we think we can let go of.
I think we can too. And, there's nothing wrong with like a Christmas branch with like a light on it. Or, going to your neighbor's house and stealing a little pine cone and putting a candle on it. I have been that girl because for so many years I had a dance studio that had to be fully, completely decorated, like 3,000 square feet of Christmas. And then my house looked like, the 4th of July just happened. I'm serious. I finally got to the point where I just didn't do any Christmas decorations or cooking at all. And that's how you're out of balance. A little bit of this and a little bit of that, subtle changes, very sustainable fixes here and there. But if you just plain don't want, like you're ordering a pizza the night before Christmas and you don't even
it's round like a Christmas ball.
And you don't even heat it up when you eat it the next day and you're happy, then, you've gone too far. You've just gone too far. So,
oh, my gosh.
So I think a little self-care during the year and downsizing expectations. So just to kind of recap, Brigid, before I go back to you, is that the little voices in our head, and I'm talking about, not those voices that we all have in the house, but the voices that, are you talking to you, could use a little sprucing up, and the expectations of others projecting themselves onto you, to recap what Monette said, could use a little boundary shifting and a little bit of dusting off. So what does it look like when you do that? All right, we've quit criticizing ourselves, and we've decided we're going to not let anyone project what Christmas looks like or the holidays look like to us. Where are we then, Brigid?
Well, we're calmer to begin with. And one of the things that I think you said, and I know that is in Monette's book, is this idea of balance. And she speaks about balance in a couple different ways, balance on the yoga mat, but she also speaks about the yin and yang, the balance of life. So part of this is also choosing to be calm over choosing to be in the chaos or to internalize the chaos. You also talked about external things, and I think we internalize the external, and so we bring the chaos into our bodies. And quite a bit of what Monette talked about in her book, and that things that I promote with women when I work with them, but especially in spiritual direction, because I'm a spiritual director, are spiritual practices. And people think, oh, those, they're like this certain kind of prayer and this and that. And spiritual practices are just very normal, natural things. Monette mentioned two of them in her book that I loved as holidays. And one was candle flame meditation or firelight meditation, and how if you focus on it and focus on your breath, you can lose yourself in it to the point where you're calming yourself. Your breath is slowing down. Your heart rate is slowing down. And she also talked about being so stressed at one point, she left the house and went to the edge of the forest, closed her eyes. She listened to the birds chirping and imagined the conversation they were having. And then she listened more and she heard things moving and she tried to imagine, were they bunnies or raccoons or deer or whatever. And in both of those are spiritual practices. I know they don't sound like it, but that's what they are. And they're easy to do. You don't have to be affiliated with a religious denomination to do them. They are just good. They're just good for you. They're good for your body, especially during the holidays, and they help you get rid of what you've internalized of this external chaos. Because for a moment, you're calm, you're at peace, your breathing is slower, your heart rate is slower, and you've reconnected with yourself. And that's one of the most important things to do is reconnect with yourself, because I think we lose ourselves during the holidays.
Well, Monette, would you like to respond to that since Brigid was speaking about your book?
Sure, I would love to. I think Brigid was just right, spot on about this idea of religious practices or spiritual practices needing to be something fancy. I think that one of the limbs of yoga that some of those practices she talked about came from, for me, was it's pratyahara, which translates as withdrawal of senses or focusing of senses. And I think particularly during the season, and unfortunately it starts earlier and earlier. The season starts sometimes before Halloween. You are bombarded with messages of buying and the music and the decorations and the invitations and stimulus in, stimulus in, stimulus in. And if there are practices that are just simple like that, and it can be a bubble bath. Maybe for this season you switch from your morning shower to an evening bath, or you add an evening bath. So you are feeling the warmth of the bath. You're listening to the almost meditative quality of the water coming in. Maybe for winter, for dinner once a week, you make a soup and you sit in silence and just feel the soup as you eat it, warming your body, entering your body. There are ways, to do things that don't take a lot of hoo-ha. You just sit down and eat your soup and focus on it. And like Brigid said, suddenly you are calmer. You have taken your senses and you've actually become aware of what you're doing. There are too many times, and I am just as guilty as anyone else, of forging through and I'm not even being mindful. Now, once we practice these things, I find that I can catch myself when I do that. And like in meditation, we're never going to do it perfectly, but we catch our thoughts drifting and we gently bring them back in. If we find ourselves living unmindfully, we don't, pull the belt out and whip ourselves and say, bad, bad, bad. We just say, oh, gosh, I was not even present, and I'm going to bring myself back. Those kind of things I think are easy to do. And like with yoga, people think, I don't have time for an hour class. Well, they might be right, but they do have time to sit for 5 minutes in the morning or in the evening and stretch out a part of their body where they feel that they are holding all that tension, or breathe for 5 minutes. So having not an all or nothing mentality, but I'm going to take care of myself in increments that work for me.
I think that's great. And I think that we really have fully expressed the theme of the show today, and I want to thank both of you for being here.
Well, we were delighted to be here.
Yes.
I hope that the listeners have gotten something that they can add into their life, and I know that I have gotten something from each of you wise women, and I appreciate it so much. I wanted to give each of you a chance to say one more thing to our listeners, but first I wanted to welcome you for Day 4 tomorrow with Pamela Stockton. She has written a piece about entering the cave of the heart, and she shares some moments and 2 decades of transformation and growth in her own journey that where she started and where she ended up, and it's quite poignant. It's very intimate, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So that's what you have to look forward to for tomorrow. So, Brigid, what final words of wisdom would you like to share with our listeners today?
To remind them to listen to their own self-talk, and as we talk to others and are kind to them, to be as kind to ourselves as we are to others.
Good point. And you, Monette?
Well, I did one of those things where I flipped open my book, and this is the quote that came out, and I think it's perfect. It's from the Middle Ages, from Desiderius Erasmus, and it's the better part of happiness is to wish to be who you are. And I think if we can remember that in the holidays, to be true to that voice inside us and not true to the image we think we need to project, we'll be a lot calmer and happier.
I love that quote, Monette. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for joining us on 21 Days of Giving Your Best. I'm Teresa Marone, and I think you're going to enjoy the rest of the series.